I'm back. I still believe that you too can draw with graphite pencil. So in this video, I want to talk about highlights and shading, how to apply graphite pencil, how to remove it, how to create possible hair, different things, and make leaves look like leaves. In order to do that, you need to know the tools. So let's make sure you watch the first video. The first video was on tools and it's called You Too Can Draw. So in hopes that you went back and looked at the You Too Can Draw first video, or that you already saw it and you're here now with me to remember the tools. Basically, you want to remember the graph I made of the pencils, and then when we go to show you how to move the pencil or move the tortillon or place the eraser on it to lift some of the pencil, you have an idea already and what kind of paper you want to choose.
Now let's talk about the tortillons a little bit broader. We had our clean one, our dirty tortillon, but these are the giant size ones. Let's talk about the different sizes. We have different sizes that you can use. They will give you a different effect. This is a dirty one, but we have, a cleaner one. You can see I sanded that. And here's some really tiny ones. They get some sharp edges. This one I guess I use for pastel, so I wouldn't use that on my, I wouldn't just take it away. So I don't use it on my pure graphite pencil. But here's a nice narrow one. And that's a little sloppy there. It's soft, so I would probably sand that off or cut it off. And then we get a little bigger and a little bigger. So we've got the different values of sizes. That gives us a different clean edge as we pull. As we might want to just pull, like say if it was a very, very skinny part of the eye and you were making a very small eye. Whoops, that's our H pencil. Well, that's not going to work. Here's a 5B. And if you don't know what these mean, the 5B or the H's, go back to the introduction video of that You Too Can Draw. And please look at the tools and look at and hear what I say about the tools. So I'm creating a hard line. We're going to create that hard line. I know I want that line there, so I'm okay with creating that hard line. Now I can take this, and if I only want a little bit of shading, I don't want to use my dirty tortillon, nor do I want to use a big one because that would pull it out really big. Maybe I just want to have a little bit of shade coming out from that. Say if it's an eyelid or something, or the fold in the eyelid. And I don't want to have too much happening here. And I want to keep it thin. And I don't want anything on the top. So maybe that's how I'm going to need my line to be, whether it's a tree or a leaf or a human eye or a mouth. And I can pull it out. I can get thinner, but I don't want any over here. So I can just pull down here with this nice skinny tortillon. And let's talk about, let's go to the H's. We talked about that in the first video. This is like one of the harder H's. It's going to have hardly any color to it. You probably can't even see that on the video. It's so gray. But that gray can give us some real fine hairs or eyelashes or fine lines on a tree or a leaf or a flower. Here we go. Now you get to see some of it because I'm creating more lines. Now we're going to take our tortillon. Let's use a medium one. And it will mix a little bit, but you're not going to see that much. But we'll go here where we've got a lot of it. And see, it still mixes, but it's not going to mix like those dark, soft B pencils. So we can still blend the grays, but they've created a groove. You're not getting rid of those grooves once you've put a hard line of H's in there, because it's hard. See, that's nice and hard. The B's, however, if you touch them, you can feel they're softer, and they lose their point quicker. So if you want a point, you're going to have to keep sharpening it. So here we've got some possible hair lines. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to take the tortillon. Let's work on some hair. Let's make hair. We can add shading, the background of hair. And maybe there's a highlight on the hair. So maybe there's light shining on the part of the bangs or something. So we're going to pretend this is a highlight. So we don't want to put any color there, not even with a dirty totalium, because we want it as white as can be, because the color of graphite, it moves and it'll spread out on its own. And so you want to be careful. Don't put any color where you need it white. You can't put it in there. So we're not going to do pencil yet. We're going to take, let's start with a kneaded pencil, the kneaded eraser. We're going to create a nice fine line with a knead eraser. You can see that you can just squish it, and then I can come in and I can create, removing some of the shade or some of the background so that we can start having what might end up being hair. Let's get a finer line with a sharper tool, and we can create real fine lines that will end up being the highlights on the hair. Not worrying about it really looking like hair right now. I'm just showing you how you would get it. We're not trying to make curly hair right this minute. We can make all kinds of straight hair, curly hair, white hair, senior person, or blonde hair. We can do almost anything. So there's your lines. We erased the pencil, and that's what my feathers are for. I find feathers so that my hands and my oils on my hands don't touch the paper. I use feathers to remove the excess erasing. So here I have a 5B. That's going to give me a dark color and a soft line. So I'm going to try to follow some of these lines. I'm not going to slowly do it and hit each line, because that would give me too much stuff. So here I'm just going to swing my arm and try to reach some of those highlights and touch those highlights with my line. And see how dark that is? Now I want to come in and I want to have more lines because there's lots of hair. But I'm going to take my 8H and I'm going to create more lines. You're not going to really mentally see them as easily as those darker lines or those erased lines. But they're still going to be there as you add more and more and more lines. This is a nice place to use your F pencil. Don't have it completely out here, so we're going to go back to a 2B. That would still be semi-hard because it's 2 closer to the center, closer to the H if you look at my chart that I made on the other video. So we go back to that chart. If you want to print out of that chart, I can send that to you. I prefer that you don't copy it. I will send you one. So here, see how it's starting to look like hair? And we can get more and more complicated with it. See how this looks like there's a highlight there? So I wouldn't want any dark in there. That would be my B's. I wouldn't want that in there. But I can throw a little bit of my H's in there, and it still keeps that highlight going. But then it looks like there's hair floating around inside of that highlight. It's not just blank like on a comic strip or a cartoon look, which those are good for that. So see how it's still even look like more hair, and we're just kind of bouncing off the head. So if it was a short-haired person, but then, you know, we could keep going and make long hair, short hair. We can curl it, and we can add as many colors of the grays as we want. We can get much darker here if we wanted to. We don't want to go back and shade because we would lose our eraser marks, and then we'd have to start all over again. So you don't want to necessarily go back to that. You want to have it right the first time. Here's an HB. HB is a combination of hard and soft. It's not so hard, it's not so gray. See, that color is a little stronger than an H would be. So we're still going to feed some of that hair upward into that highlight area. And if you don't like something, you just kind of come back and add another color in. So that's basically hair. We're going to pause again for a second and come back with another idea.
Back to basics. To apply and remove with the tools to get the highlights and the shading, Applying variations of blacks and grays, remembering the paper is your white.
So while this doesn't exactly look like the most perfect hair on a portrait that I might do, this is just to give you the idea, teach you how to get started. You can get more detailed, you can be cartoon looking, and you can be very realistic, and we'll talk about how to get even more realistic as you go. But right now, that's just so you understand how you can combine the different variations of the grays and the darks and your softs and your hard pencils and work with your erasers. Let's just already have some things already done here. We already talked about the dirty tortillon, using an 8B and using a clean tortillon to move it around, an 8B with hard lines, using a medium tortillon to move it out of those hard lines. But remember, every time you put a hard line down, it's not going to erase in a completion form. You're going to have a straight line, so you got to make sure you want it. Here's another little set of, a style of working with hair and curling it a little bit. So you work with a dirty tortillon if you have one, and you put you mix it up to fill in the space. Use a sharp edge eraser to pull off to create your highlights. Let's go ahead and look at that again. So we just take some of our sharp edges of a pencil and we flip it around and we get the hair look. And we cover up these lines of highlights because we don't want them necessarily that fat that the eraser does. Sometimes you can get a really clean, skinny line from the eraser. All right, so that's looking more like hair. Now let's go over here to this showing the lightest gray, which is your 9H that I've ever seen. And I made some lines with it, and if you can see these grooves in here, that was me just using a 9H, and it put grooves in the paper. So if I take a 5B and run over top of that, there is no way that groove's ever going to go away. But if you want the groove to create a line and mixing up your 9B over top of it, then you've got that groove in a spot, and now it's lighter than it, and you've got a nice clean line. But for the most part, more times than not, you're not going to want that groove, so you've got to be very careful before you use your hard pencils. You've got to know you want it there. Okay, so that kind of looks interesting and cool with the lines there, so there is a use for that in different pictures you might be doing. So it looks like a nice clean hairline, right? So there you go. Or maybe it would be a leaf line. We could make that a leaf and have that be the line in the leaf. I didn't do that the right direction, but that's okay. A dirty tortillon, we put that on here, and then we erased with a knead eraser just to show that you can get a lot of it off. But once you've put any graphite on a portion of paper, you can pretty much guarantee you're not going to get it all off. It might come pretty white depending on how much you put in there. So that's pretty white, but I still see a faint of gray. Whereas over here, it's pure white still. So you don't want it somewhere, don't put it there. And here we've created an eyebrow, just kind of a random eyebrow. It's not perfect. We can make it perfect another time. I'll show you how to do that. But this is just so you're learning the basics, learning how to work with the pencils, learning how to work with the erasers. This is not a Bristol paper. It's a softer paper. It's more of a drawing pad. You're not going to get all that smooth look like I can show you on some other work I've done. Here we have where I just took all the H's, and I'm showing you that the H itself is a little soft and it's darker. And then we go to a 3H. I mean, there's a 2H, but I didn't use that one. There's a 3H, here's a 4H, here's a 6H. They get lighter and lighter, and you can only get them so dark because they are the lighter grays. So the variables or the variation is there. And then I pulled an eraser through, and again, it will erase, but you're still going to have a little piece of it there. Let's go up here and look at this mouth. This was all done with a dirty tortillon. I'm not trying to make a perfect mouth. I just wanted to give you an example of what you can do. Once you get familiar with the ways of a mouth or the ways of a nose, the looks and the different designs, and if you're copying a certain person, you'll see that it changes. We're going to go real quickly here. Now in this area here, we would want that darker because we work from the dark to the light and the lightest to the dark. So to get this mouth, if we wanted it to be more than just a shaded mouth, to get more detail in it, we would throw in this line nice and hard. You're not going to get that out again. So that would be a nice hard crisp line, and see how that makes that mouth look more real. And then if we go up here and just make this portion of the nose a little darker. Now I didn't do that to start, I just used my tortillon, and we can get a crisper line around here because now we know that there is a good line there. It is a little bit outlined in order to get it to look realistic. So we can do that. But I started with just a tortillon, just created the shapes. We can go darker here. We can create our lines in the lips with the different colors. We can pull out, like sometimes you'll see if you look at somebody, they have a clear highlight on their lip. It might be curved, it might be straight. So now just taking that tortillon, dirty tortillon, and we change the mouth just slightly, and we've got a more realistic look. Okay, now let's go to this one. This is just a quick exercise. We'll do some of these exercises in other videos of a glass and a cup. We can create the roundness, and we learn how to make it a translucent glass as opposed to an opaque cup, and how to create shadows around it. And we may have put the pencil on, and then we took it off with the highlighter, the erasers to highlight it. And that's just a simple exercise that we can talk about and share. Now this one is again done with just a tortillon. All I did was create a page with a bunch of dirty tortillon marks on it. Made it darker here and lighter here. And then I took my eraser and I just pulled off a face around it and made the face in it and created it from there. There's no pencil. No pencil was used. It was just a dirty tortillon and an eraser to create a little bit of face. Now we could get more detailed if we wanted to turn that into a true face. Again, we can take our dark B pencils and get the mouth harder and the eyes harder, put in the pupil. But we're not going to do all that right now, but that is how we get it to be more solid and realistic. This is using a colored pencil, an amber colored pencil, brownish colored pencil. And I just want you to see and hear the detail of this eye. The lines coming in. Now we can get even more realistic than that, but here's your white. I left the white there to create the highlight. You don't want to put any color in there unless later you see it's needed. You don't want to put any color in here where this white is. You just put your color over here and you pull it in, and that creates the roundness of the eyeball. Let's go back up here to this one, this display. Over here is just some chalk. Took the artistic license to take this picture that I did and put it on a background and add a white pastel to finish off the eye. In here are birds flying, there's clouds. So the pupil, with the highlight of the pupil, is actually a moon. And if you look close, if you can look closely at the eyelashes, I'll teach you how to work those eyelashes, how to swing your arm and how to move it around, and how to do the background of the eyelid first and then throw the eyelashes on. And we'll get into more detail of all of this in another video. And that's it for now. Take care. I hope that was useful, and I hope to see more of you, or you see more of this. And again, that's it for now.
We'll be back with more about how to draw an eye in the next video, and then really learning how to round out the edges to show the 3D dimension in a 2D form. And for now, practice your shading and just practice using your tools, or when you can, go get some of the tools, and we'll get started with more details as we go. I hope you'll come back again for video 3 and come draw an eye with me. Thank you for joining me. You too can draw. Please remember to subscribe so that you can be notified about the most recent videos from Captured Moments as we move on from pencil to paint and pastel and watercolor paints and different types of working with materials.